All right, just hopped off with Jasmine from FixBiome. Great conversation. We got a little bit feisty today because there were some mechanisms and some things that I want to go a little bit deeper on that were just unknown or just got a little bit past what is known or is even available to be known in the research and science. So kind of an interesting conversation. And then there's also some interesting things because Australia has such different regulations and rules than the United States does, like the FDA and the FTC and things like that. So Jasmine actually enlightens us a little bit on some of the differences between Australia and the United States, and some of the things that she has to do as a founder of a health and wellness product to mitigate those things. So interesting conversation. Hope you check it out. At the very end, as always, Chloe and I jump into the lab results section and we determine whether or not FixBiome is something that we would use or not. And for this product, what we determined What up, everybody? Today we are talking to Jasmine. She's the founder of FixBiome, a supplement company dedicated to promoting and supporting optimal gut health. Welcome to the Decision Lab, Jasmine.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Heck yeah. We're pumped to have you. So the first section, I know I told you previously all of the sections that we were going through, but there's one I left out intentionally because it's a surprise section. So let's have a conversation. Let's chat and just listen into this quick video.
Hi, my name is Stella. I'm Jasmine's assistant. And 3 things I want to share about Jasmine is she is very passionate, dedicated, and has creative mind. It is where now for FixBiome because of her passion. And I'm also grateful for her as she hired me. I'm working for her for more than 2 years now, and I've learned a lot. So I'm really, really thankful.
Oh, that's the only person that warms my heart. That's the only person that's still, so when we started out, like, that's still with us at the company from way back then. And honestly, Stella is my superhero. She is, she was my original VA, and I'm not even kidding, without her, the rest of the team would fail. Like, we would actually fail. Like, oh, that's so cute. Thank you.
I love that. That's great. I've got a VA and assistant like that as well. That's awesome.
You just found one that's just gold that you're like, I would move heaven and earth. Like, if I ever lost you, like, it takes a lot to find them, but when you find them so early in your journey and they grow with the company, it's actually so rewarding. Like, so rewarding.
Hell yeah. I love that. That's cool. Yeah, we love getting to hear from the people that love the founders and people that we talk to. So it's awesome that
I'm so glad you asked her. She's a good one.
Hell yeah, I love that. So I'd love to move into our origin story. We don't talk a ton about our founders and the people that we chat with. We let them tell their own story. So how'd you get here? What's your background?
So this all started, I grew up in obviously Australia, pretty good gut health, never had an issue. I was in law school. That's what I did after school. I was absolutely against medicine, anything that sort of related, hated bodily fluids. So it's quite funny we've ended up here. But I started to experience gut issues. I did come, very fortunately, from a medical family, right, which gave me, I guess, a lens of understanding, like, medicine as a whole, but it also meant that when I started to experience gut issues, which actually came on after a trip to Bali, and I got a really severe episode of food poisoning. And what a lot of people don't realize is when we have these episodes, whether it's in Bali or London, because the human microbiome from us over in the West is so undiverse now, and our gut makes up 70% of our immune system, when we do come into contact with something, you can actually do some structural damage to your gut as your immune response, I guess, secondarily attacks the gut to kind of, keep you safe and all of that. So I didn't actually thought I got full resolve from that. It was a pretty horrible few days. But as time went on, I started to notice my gut health just wasn't what it used to be. I used to be able to eat, a full diet. I didn't have any problems. And then over time, things just became progressively worse and worse. I was bloating a lot. It was very much a gradual decline, but by the end of it, I had a massive list of foods I couldn't eat. I had skin issues. I'd gone to so many doctors. I'd been scoped, prodded, poked with every which thing you can, which is a really common experience for consumers at the moment. 80% of all research on gut health is recent, which means your GP, your doctor, quite literally wasn't educated on gut health when they were in medical school. So it's a very new space. It's very hard to navigate. Somebody who did have access to a lot of doctors around me, a lot of specialists, they were still confused on it. And I'm like, well, this is problematic. And we started out as an education blog. So I started reading literature on NCBS and PubMed because tend to do that, just go down little rabbit holes. But from there, I started talking to some gastros and trying other supplements in the market and getting either partial or no relief. I'm like, well, technically, this research paper says this ingredient should have this impact. And Chloe, with your background in pharma manufacturing, will really understand it. It's like, well, actually, when we're looking at an active ingredient, say apple, right, and we're using the apple in the product for the sugar content, different coloured apples that are really ripe versus apples that are really early in their life cycle, they all have different sugar content. So two things can say apple on a label, and you're getting completely different amounts of the actual required active. So talked to some gastros, talked about how you would address that problem, and what they said is essentially if you really wanted to get a consistent product, you'd need to apply pharmaceutical-like practices to a natural product, which Chloe would know all about, but that's a very sort of different and more rigorous testing process to get those actives out of those ingredients, and there's so much more variability. So we launched off the back of a little baby education platform. It was a faceless little thing I'd started on the side. I was in law school at the time. And yeah, it just showed how much demand there was for a solution. Like I'd really built a relationship with obviously this little base. They'd gone through our whole process. Like, we'd kept on delaying the launch and things were going wrong. But it really showed there's market demand. Like it's a pretty big thing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna buy a gut supplement off of like an Instagram education page because I believe that, this could potentially be helpful for me. Yeah, so that's how we started.
Had you started a company before two things. Did you finish law school? Are you a lawyer, like a practicing lawyer currently?
I dropped it out. I didn't finish law school, but I'm glad I didn't too. I work with lawyers sometimes now, and I'm just like, God, I'm so glad I'm not on the other side of this. But I think I always knew, to be honest, when I went to law school, I'm like, for me, the options kind of were you doing medicine, you're doing commerce, or you're going to law school. Like those were your three, and I'm just like, well, I'll take law. Seems cool. I've watched Suits. So that was my logic.
Jesus. Oh boy. So what else have you done before FixBiome? Like have you started other companies? What else have you done?
So I was pretty young when I started FixBiome, but I did actually start some other companies along the way, which I then weren't either commercially viable long term. I mean, it's a pretty common story, but I was like a baby entrepreneur. At school, I was always like figuring out ways to, if there's an opportunity to turn it into a commercial endeavor, I probably will. That's just always been in my nature, to my detriment. Like now today, I'm like, you don't need to turn like that something you enjoy into like something tax efficient or something blah, blah, blah. But yeah, definitely some learnings there. Stella actually worked with me on a previous project as well. So brought somebody else over from that who were really important in the beginning stages of the business. But as the company grew, like for everyone, people that are there at the beginning, unfortunately, aren't always a fit as you grow and scale. So that's kind of me. I'd say I probably have many failed ventures, some more serious, some less serious, some semi-successful, but FixBiome was where my passion ended up laying. So.
Super cool. What have been some of the biggest obstacles you've had to overcome in your life to get where you are today? Or is there one that really stands out?
Life or business? Because probably
Life.
I grew up in a pretty, not untraditional environment, but I missed a lot of school when I was really young. And I think probably one of the most pivotal moments in my entire life was actually, I was too cool for it. Like I did well, but it was the end of year 10. And here in Australia, it really starts to matter in year 11 and 12 to what university you're going to get into. And because I'd missed like a solid chunk of school, like we traveled a lot, like Dad was setting up like different stuff around the country, like in medicine. and I'd also missed school for other reasons and was very in and out in different schools and stuff. I think it was in year 9, at the end of year 10, and it was the very last day of school. And my teacher, who was also the head of academics, I used to hand in assignments that were really either very good or they were terrible because I had none of the background knowledge. I'd missed so much school. There are some subjects you can come to the table in, say, year 10, and like if you're there and you can grasp it, you can do well. But there are other subjects which you need the fundamentals to actually move on and start doing the stuff. And he pulled me aside. It was after class, and I was like, I don't know what I would have been doing, but he's like, Jasmine, you're staying back. I'm just like, what? And I'm like, do I have to? He's like, yeah, you have to. Anyways, he goes, and he puts down like, I think it was like 5 of my last papers, lays them out in front of me. And he goes, this is an A, this is an A, this is an A. You can fill this out. So that's a 0. And he's like, this is a fail. And he goes, no matter what, he goes, these are A's, but when you mix in these zeros, you're hardly even average. And you're not an average person. He goes, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know what goes on for you. But what I do know is whatever's happened or whatever's gone on, don't let it determine the rest of your life. It's your call. I'm the head of academics. He goes, you can come to my office on the last day of school and go and get the curriculum that you've missed for that time period and I guess essentially go and relearn it, which served me really well in business. And I was like, I'm not doing that. That's so lame. I'm going to have my holidays with my friends. And I remember thinking about it and like sitting there, and I'd moved out of home at the time. So I was like, oh, I really don't want to do that. But I remember he's like, I'm like, how much like stuff is there? He goes, well, it's like all the textbooks, like there's a lot. And I went down and I got like bags and I brought all the stuff back home, locked myself in a room for 2 months and came back in year 11 and 12 and never got a crappy grade ever again. So I think that definitely built some stamina. It was also very humbling to go through in year 10, like a year 7 textbook, but it taught me some skills that have served me well, and I don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for that teacher. So I hope he's well. He still follows me on Instagram, so.
That's amazing. What caused you to miss all the school in previous years?
So my parents were like pretty turbulent growing up. I grew up in a great family of like really, really smart people, but they had their own stuff going on. So we kind of moved around, we're in and out, like we're sent to boarding school, brought back, same with my sister, like we were just everywhere. So we never had that consistent base. Like we were in Lightning Ridge, like where Dad was setting up like some stuff there, very random places throughout Australia. So I really got a diverse look at medicine as a whole, though, from that, because, I mean, Lightning Ridge is an opal mining town. Catherine up in the Northern Territory, one of the, like, lower socioeconomic places you can go, and Dad was, like, setting up stuff there and working there. So I guess I got a pretty interesting childhood. But I'd say, like, even that experience within itself taught me so much. Like, I learned so much about different things. It just wasn't in a traditional way.
I love that. That's interesting. What kind of doctor or what kind of medical background did your parents have? You mentioned that a couple times.
So Dad, he was a general GP, but he went into pharmaceutical manufacturing himself and launched one of Australia's very first telehealth platforms. So this was way back in 2010 that he launched that. So it was way before anyone like thought that there was any validity in it. He was actually a really good like full stack developer. So when he was young, he really wanted to do engineering, and he actually got an offer to go work at Microsoft. And my grandfather was like, no, you're doing medicine. Like everyone in my family was a doctor. So he's like, computers will be nothing in 20 years. So I guess it was kind of his rebellion to go and then still develop like the platform. And yeah, he ended up selling that to a ASX listed company here in Australia. And he also, when the Hep C medication, so hepatitis C medication, you might see the similarity in name here, but wasn't on our PBS. So I know you have a very different medical system, but it really annoyed him that there were people dying for cost, and he's very like anti that kind of thing. He's very much like, it shouldn't be like that. So he went into pharmaceutical testing and developing, and then imported that medication into Australia. It's actually the reason it's on our PBS now. So yeah, interesting background. Taught me a lot. I learned a lot of lessons from observing.
What would you say is the biggest one that stuck with you your entire life thus far that you learned from him?
He's a pretty hard cracker. Resilience. He was pretty hard on me. So, him and I, he's great. He's a brilliant mind, but I guess resilience, to be honest, just resilience. Like sometimes things are challenging. Sometimes relationships are challenging. You're going to get knocked back. You're going to not feel like doing it. Sometimes like you're not going to get along with someone or you're going to be in pain, but you've got to do it. Like you've got to do the work. No one's going to do it for you. You've got to show up anyways, work with the tools that you've got. And like at the end of the day, it ends with you. Like this was my favorite quote from him. He's a very interesting operator, but he goes, you can do whatever you like. And I'm like 10 at this age. He goes, no, you can actually do whatever you like. I'm just like, so can I smoke this cigarette? He's like, sure. Like, and this is a doctor. And I'm just like, what do you mean, Dad? And he goes, as long as you're willing to pay the consequences, that's life, Jasmine. And he was just very inclined. And he's like, passes me the lighter. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, you're going to let me smoke? And he's like, yes, as long as you're willing to pay the consequences. And like, even with drugs, he never told me and my sister not to do drugs. He sat us down at a table and showed us what it did to your brain and what it did to people's lives. And he goes, go at it. Like that was literally how I was raised. I know that's insane, but that's how he is.
That's amazing. I've
never done drugs. My sister took a different route. She still wanted to test his theories out. But,
hey, to each their own. I've heard of a parenting style. I forgot what it's called, but it is similar to what he did, where it's just kind of like, here are the consequences. Test for yourself. Be an adult. And I'm just like, damn.
But I mean, it teaches you. But I guess he kind of like he really did just believe that. Like that kids, I guess, were tiny adults or not. But I think it taught me good lessons and built me to who I am today. But it's crazy. Like I remember once he said, "Don't eat my chocolate, otherwise you'll have to eat nothing but chocolate for 2 weeks." And he made me eat just chocolate for like days. And then his partner at the time was like, you can't do that. Like he sat down the whole dinner table because I ate his chocolate, right? And sat down the whole dinner table and it was tacos and I love tacos, and then sat me down with a block of Cadbury. He's like, Jasmine's not having any. She's made her choice. I'm just like, Dad, what the hell? Like, I don't have dinner. He's like, no. He's like, you made your choice in your weak moment. This is it now. I'm just like, what? But yeah, that lasted for 3 days, and then
holy shit,
it's insane. But I know. I tell them stories like they're normal, and everyone's like, that's normal. But it taught me a lot, and I wouldn't be who I am or where I am if it weren't for his interesting and complex mind.
Wow, that's cool. Well, speaking of where you are today, you are the founder of a gut biome company. So, what are 3 things people can do that would be terrible for their gut biome? And what are 3 things that they can do that would be amazing for their gut biome?
Well, terrible, eat the modern Western diet. That's pretty up there. Second to that, live in the modern day with all the stress and lack of natural regulation. That's another thing. And then third is probably eat a whole lot of those really badly artificial foods, like your protein bars with all those fake sugars. They actually have now been changed via the World Health Organization's recommendation from being safe in small quantities to probably not. We're seeing some evidence emerge that they actually damage the DNA of the gut. So stay away from your artificial sweeteners. Just because your protein bar has 20 grams of protein and 250 calories or whatever, it's really damaging long term, and it messes with you in ways you don't even understand.
Got it. Okay. And what about 3 things that would benefit your gut biome?
Walking, moving. Like your gut is actually supposed to be like you're supposed to move. You've got your migrating motor complex there. Eating obviously a whole foods and real diet of real food. Our sort of rule, my general diet advice is you should eat food that looks like it came from the earth. You should do things that humans were naturally designed to do. Anything that's not so natural, you're probably, if you overexpose yourself, going to have issues. But those would be the first 2. And then the third is making sure that you're not, if you start to experience issues on the previous recommendation of eating a whole foods diet and you're finding your gut can no longer digest foods it really should be able to, and there isn't an underlying medical condition, you need to go and address any imbalances that may be there, because that's not you, the host, that is intolerant or unable to digest these foods you should. It's your gut microbiome, and they're two separate things. I mean, they work together, but you get what I mean.
Love it. I love that.
Yeah, that's
cool.
really helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, that's a perfect transition into the claim to fame, right? So your product is FixBiome, the system, as we'll get into further here. So tell us what FixBiome is and why we should care in 60 seconds. Go.
FixBiome is a gut. Sorry, I started ahead of time, but FixBiome is a gut health company. We manufacture supplements based on not what the marketing hype says, but what the literature says around ingredients and influencing the gut microbiome, both from a bacterial perspective, fungal perspective, but also a structural perspective. It's actually been a challenge of ours because you can only make certain marketing claims if you include certain ingredients, and often the research just doesn't support that. And yeah, we have a three-step system. We also have Gut Fix, which is part of the three-step system, which is something you can use every day to improve and maintain with gut health, whereas the system takes a multifaceted approach to addressing the underlying causes of IBS, because IBS as a whole is an umbrella diagnosis. There are lots of things that lay under that, so we take a approach where we don't actually introduce new probiotic strains like everybody loves to see very popular today, because no two microbiomes are the same. So instead we use ingredients that influence your unique microbiome to suit you and as the host animal.
Got it. So there are other gut biome products on the market. Why create your own?
Literally from my own experience. Like, I was actually creating a product for myself. Like, I played guinea pig on me. So I tried, like I said, lots of different products on my own journey, and it pisses me off. Like, I'm like, okay, it says in here should work. Then why is it not working for me? And that's when I started asking questions. And the one thing about me is I'll just ask. Like, if I've got a question, like, I'm not afraid of the word no or shooting my shot or being knocked down. So I was just asking, and people were really actually, like, the gastros in the space are also quite concerned about the growing rates of gut issues and young people dying from GI stuff. So they're like, well, the gut's an incredibly volatile place. So one, and Chloe, with your background in pharma, will understand, you've got to make sure that you're actually getting that active component. Two, the gut is so volatile that you can't even comprehend. Like, there's a reason for that. You're breaking down food, turning it into energy, and then like excreting it. It's a very powerful organ. And then the third point that they had is like the dosages. Like, what's the amount of the active you're getting? Like, you could have, again, to the apple example, 2 apples, they weigh the same, different amounts of sugar. How much of that active that is in this particular study showing these results is actually in that product, and you cannot tell that from a label. So yeah, that's kind of what led to our creation process. It was just like a mind game, I guess.
Something that I think is unique about what you do is you have these courses, where I've seen a lot of other gut microbiome companies just have one flagship supplement. Mm-hmm. So could you explain to us what the courses are and how they work?
So having a course was actually an accident. And it's a good thing it happened, because I went out to create one product to bring to market that would really support the gut microbiome. But what we found is actually to have enough of each ingredient and stabilize it in such a way that would take impact on the gut, we needed to separate them. So we have an oil capsule where certain ingredients are encapsulated in oil, and then the other is a powder-based supplement. And we've done that intentionally, because if we were to combine that, like, we would essentially render them unstable and unable to take impact. So we ended up, in order to have the doses we wanted to have and the, I guess, stability for the gut, we had to do a 3-part system. So that's why there are 3 products in that, and we take a very broad, we're not trying to just tackle one thing. We understand that there are multiple parts of the gut that work together, and they all need supporting if you are facing gut issues, not just one individual straight bacterial issue or so forth. So yeah, that's how we got there.
Who's we? Who's the team behind FixBiome?
So I'm still the founder and CEO. I really shouldn't be, but we have, really depends on what you're talking about, whether you're talking about marketing or you're talking about finance or what element. But in terms of, we have a board of advisors now that go into our process, and we pay to essentially, because I'm not a scientist, right? So we work with manufacturers and people in the pharmacy space as well to develop and work on products and work on product development there, because I wouldn't be able to put two things together. I can read the research, but the actual practical implementation of product development isn't my strong point.
Got it. Who are some of those people or some of those places that you work with?
So we have a partner in the US, and that's actually where we started. I'm not going to say who our partner is, but over there that we work with on product development, and then we pass, once we've come up with a concept, then we pass it over to our manufacturer, who then goes and works on that and produces that, and then we just replicate it to bring it into the Australian market. So that was actually probably one of the most challenging things that we did, was to how do we create the same product here in a new country with different ingredients when we have to go through a different process. It was really, really hard. And like, they didn't actually think they were going to be able to do it, because some ingredients you're allowed to use over in the US, we're not allowed to use over here in Australia, but we are allowed to use them, provided, this is a good example that the team found, berberine, you're allowed to use berberine HCI. We're not. We can use berberis something else, but back to the active ingredient part of things, the berberis still contains a HCI. It's just the varying quantities and stuff. So we had to find a way to work around that. That took so long. Like, we didn't actually think we were going to be able to do it, but we managed to get it to be the same and standardized across the two markets. So yeah, there's been some really good people that we have worked with to get things to where they are. I don't want our competitors to go and also source out the same people, but yeah, and obviously the doctors that we helped help with our company too, and contacts that I made. And I would have had those contacts had I not grown up in the family I did, and also had that exposure to the pharmaceutical industry through Dad. So a lot of credit goes to him on that too.
That's cool. Who are some of the doctors on your team, and what are their backgrounds?
So I'm just going to mute this podcast here. I know you're American guys, but I'm in Australia, and we're not allowed to advertise doctors. So we've got a regulating body called AFRA here, and doctors aren't allowed to legally endorse any products like pharmaceutical. Sorry, I should have flagged this. I forget you guys aren't here. Aren't allowed to endorse products. We are endorsed by the Gut Foundation, which is Australia's leading authority on gut health, and their board obviously uses that, but for legal reasons, I can't ever position one of our doctors as actively, even though they worked on the process, as actively endorsing supplements. They'll lose their medical license. So that's just a flag on my end. Yeah. Sorry. Did you guys
know?
That's
know that? Did you guys know that we're not allowed to advertise pharmaceuticals or supplements here in Australia, like on TV? We're allowed to.
That is amazing. I love that. I didn't know about the doctor thing.
No, so you know how you have like TV ads, or just off the podcast for a sec, but you have TV ads where you can see pharma. It's illegal to advertise pharmaceuticals here in Australia. And it's illegal for doctors to promote any sort of supplement, to promote any sort of drug. They get no kickback from drug companies, and it is strictly regulated. So before this goes live, I'm actually going to need to now send it just to make sure that everything I've said is compliant. But yeah, just that's something to flag, because APRA, which is the regulating body, you lose your license instantly if you're ever doing something like that.
Even if you're on the founding team of a company?
Yeah. Yeah, literally, if you can't endorse or say, like, you can say separately, like, I worked on such a project, but you're not even allowed to say something like was effective, works, whatever. If you go through some of our content, you'll notice that the doctors that we speak to that do use our product aren't from Australia, so they're like located in Dubai, and there's a reason for that. We can't interview any of our doctors, and you'll also notice if you go through our content, you'll see me interviewing Roy, who is the CEO of the Gut Foundation, but they have a board of gastros, and obviously but I can't interview the gastros directly. So yeah, that's just our laws and regulations, and we need to be really cautious around that too, because if I lose those people's trust and faith, I'm fucked.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's it. The more you know. That's interesting. I doubt anybody that listens to our show knows
explain that. Actually, it's actually a really interesting concept. Just in America, like, you guys are allowed to indoor, and it's because our PBS is completely different. Medicine's supposed to be free and equal in Australia. It's like a big thing in our voting and our election and things like that. So, but whereas like, I remember the first time I went to America and I saw ads for drugs and I was like, what the hell? Like, that's insane. Whereas in Australia, nothing. Like, you don't even know who makes them. Like, you can't be advertised because it shouldn't be a consumer choice, in our opinion, of which drug you consume. And what's on offer from your doctor should also not be influenced by pharma. We're very different. So pharmaceutical companies target our PBS because unless you're on our PBS, you're really expensive. And it's why we have such a lower cost of medicine than you, because we have this program that the government evaluates what we should be covering and what we shouldn't. And then that's presented to the public at a very low cost, and our government wears that cost. So rifaximin is $5,000 over where you are. It's not on our PBS, but it's $500. And drugs that are on our, like, insulin, stuff like that, it's like $5. So our medical system is so different to yours. And we have very different regulations around it. And we've got the TGA, you've got the FDA. So the TGA in their scrutiny is considered, like, I can't bring in my American supplement to Australia because your process isn't the same as ours. So the TGA is very, very different, and we have different laws, regulations around what you can and can't say. We've got a website. Our website, the website you guys will be seeing, is different to our Australian site, purely because the regulations here are so strict on supplements, whereas you have a lot more fly by the wheel, not get in trouble, but we get fines. Like, most major supplement companies here in Australia have been fined by the TGA. We're not even in Australia supposed to use like influencers or things like that. I mean, everybody does, but we're technically, with the new changes that have been rolled out, everyone's navigating it. So we're working under very different frameworks here.
Damn. That's wild.
So that's why
Sounds more like
it's fucked, it's horrible. But that's why we've actually partnered with the Gut Foundation, because it's the only way we can say, like, with a point of difference, that we're the only supplement company, because a corporation or a charity or a research lab can endorse a product, but the individual doctors here in Australia can't. So we have that partnership with the Gut Foundation. So here in Australia, we can say legally we're the only product endorsed by the Gut Foundation, but we aren't saying doctors associate with this product. And we can say practitioners use, because we have practitioners that use also in the UK and Emirates and America, but we can't say an Australian doctor XYZ. So we navigate a very, very different system here than you guys. It's not fly by the wheel. Like, your supplements that you see on TikTok and stuff, really strict here. Often they don't even get into our country. So sorry about that. So if you wanted to really go, I just have to be super, super mindful, because the board will have my neck if I, I have to pay like legal full time to like screen all of our crap, so we can make sure nobody wants to lose their license here or get APRA up in their grill, which does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, completely. It makes sense. Since we're on the topic of just like industry standards and kind of, the differences and like, how countries do things, I'm really curious.
It's an interesting debate about whether, you can have doctors endorsing drugs over in the US and supplements, or associated or involved. Like, you've got Dr. Grundy, and like we actually are trying to. Have you heard about Grundy? That's illegal. They're not allowed to run their ads here in Australia. You're not allowed to do that stuff.
Not put him as the pinnacle of the American medical system by any means.
I know, but you've seen his aggressive advertising, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
He's everywhere. Like, that wouldn't even, like, he can't advertise here in Australia. That marketing strategy, anything that is doctor endorsing anything. Doctors aren't even supposed to endorse diets unless they're being approved by a university. So doctors can say low FODMAP diet to a patient, but they can't say SIBO diet or something like that, because there's not enough. It's not been endorsed by like one of the major universities and implemented here. But we have different standards, different like medical and supplementary standards across the board, and ways doctors can speak.
That's wild. I think this is the perfect transition into our lab section, where we talk about science and proof and research and stuff. So in this section, we dive into some of the evidence behind your product, claims you guys make, all this kind of stuff. So it sounds like you have to go through a more rigorous process. So this should be a fun time. The first question is, what peer-reviewed studies or clinical trials do you guys have to support the claims you make about FixBiome's products?
So every single one of our ingredients, you can go onto our website and see the research papers that back up its inclusion for use. So how FixBiome as a system works is we've like I said before, IBS, umbrella diagnosis. Under that umbrella of IBS, there are often a lot of different things going on. Like that might be damage to the structural integrity of the gut, which you can't see. If I scope you, if I stick something up and down, we can't see what's going on in the middle. We can't test your intestinal permeability. We can't take what's called a small like bowel aspirate, unless there was a really big reason for it, because it is a medically invasive procedure. So we sort of look at the gut as a multifunctioning thing. We look at it in terms of the structure, which includes your tight junctions, your mucous membranes, that mucus lining, and your microvilli. So they all have really important functions in the body. The tight junctions is sort of, think of them like a selective drawbridge that let, the good stuff that should be getting out, and keep the bad stuff in. And when we have constant bloating or we have gas build up in our small intestine, what happens to those junctions, and we know from studies, is they become loose, and that is the concept of leaky gut, which they used to not think was a real thing, or it wasn't really considered proper medicine. But now we've actually proved, yes, it is, and it's called intestinal permeability. So we have ingredients that are geared towards specifically, say, that particular motion, but then we also look at what sits on top of that. All right, your mucus. Your mucus is really important to the functioning and the move through of your gut. So we've got very specific ingredients that are targeted at the mucus. And then the microvilli, that's actually a really something that's quite commonly compromised in people in the Western world, just because of we get exposed to something, we have an attack, our immune system actually can do damage to it. It's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because we do have these undiverse biomes. So we look at how can we provide them with the fuel, in particular ingredients, to support that sweeping motion that goes through your gut. So every 60 to 90 minutes, we have a sweep through of our gut, and that can be compromised by things going on from the structure of the gut or just stress. So how can we include specific ingredients that are targeted at, say, microvilli or, the mucous membrane or tight junctions to make that focus properly? And then from there, we move on to the bacteria of the gut and the influencing of those sorts of things. So we know that when people take antibiotics, and Chloe's a girl, you might not have experienced this, but you can get thrush, and you can get thrush of the vagina and thrush of the mouth most commonly. And what nobody really talks about or can test for in a decent way with where medicine is at is thrush, and how common it is to get thrush of the gut, I guess. It's made out of the same material from a scientific sort of perspective, not exactly the same, but it's a similar environment. But when you go to your doctor, you're not going to be tested for that. So a lot of people that have this IBS diagnosis actually have, thrush overgrowth or imbalances in the fungus of their gut. So we then include some antifungal type ingredients that are aimed to get your fungal levels back in a way that is more normal than, you can't insert or downsert other things. There are also ways you can do that with drugs too. So if you want to take that option. And then we look at the bacteria, but we don't just look at the bacteria in terms of, a lot of the problem is when we do a stool sample test, right? The bacteria living in your gut might be normal per se. Like there's no Campylobacter, there's no Salmonella, there's no, pathogen, there's no parasite, there's no anything we can see. But what's actually happened is we have the small intestine and the big intestine, or big intestine, small intestine. And the small intestine can become out of balance, like too much bacteria can start living here, but nothing about your stool sample is going to tell you you have too much bacteria. There are ways to test for that, and I always tell people this, and it's really common to go, if you are a consumer, by the way, and you've been given the diagnosis of IBS, I know in America it's more expensive for you, but the way you actually can look at what's going on in that area, we can't scope you down there, like it doesn't go far enough. So what you need to do is go to a lab and do a breath test. So what's his name? forget his name, but Gramelli Tech are doing that really well right now. Actually, over in the US, they do mail order. We actually tried to partner with them, but Australia is such a big continent that it was too much time between our major cities and the lab to keep the results stable and like into that. But they're doing it really well over there. Or you can go into an actual lab. They'll hook you up to a machine. They'll give you a solution, and then they'll monitor what's happening in your small intestine. That's actually the only way you can see. But all of your other labs will be completely normal. So in our product, we use ingredients that are targeted at making sure your small intestine isn't overpopulated with bacteria in general. And that, like I said, coming back to that sweeping motion, this is why the gut's so multifunctional, and you need to approach it holistically, is that moving through. So what it does is make sure that the bacteria and the food debris and all of that ends up like down where it should be. And when that's not happening properly, there starts to become, over time, a build-up of bacteria. And we know that at the moment it's SIBO, and there's 2 types, 3 types, but they've relabeled one of them. And it's still very much an emerging field. But we make sure that we are looking at the gut and using ingredients that are not just targeted at one thing, but instead take a holistic approach to the gut, because you could get rid of that, say, bacteria that's overpopulated, or you could get rid of it. But why is it happening in the first place? Like, it occurred. So what made it occur? What mechanism actually resulted in that end product? So I think that is sort of how we go about it. And if you go onto FixBiome, you'll see all of our ingredients and like why they've been included. And some people like, why would you? It's like, well, actually, we're not just trying to make more good bacteria. We're trying to actually consider the fact that a lot of people now have these damaged environments, and that's why these issues have started to persist. So yeah,
These are that's appreciate the background in gut biome. Something that we see in supplement companies oftentimes is something called the composition fallacy. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's this assumption that if each ingredient is individually has evidence backing its benefits, then a formula that combines all of those ingredients must automatically be equally or more effective. But that's not necessarily true. So do you guys have any research on the product itself, not just single ingredients, like clinical trials, peer-reviewed research, anything like that on the product itself as a whole?
So we've got a patent coming up. So we sourced a test group of people taking this particular variation versus people taking our variation of ingredient combination, and then got the results reported back from that to, essentially show that they had a larger relief in their symptoms by doing it with the way in which we have designed the product. And we also did that with what would happen if you actually combined, say, 2 of our capsules into a different dose or a lesser dose or a changed dose, and then took the same thing. Would you get the same relief from symptoms? And the answer was obviously, in this case, no. And on top of that, we also consider our ingredients in such a way that some of them are non-absorbable. So I guess only good example, coming back to the berberine, it's got a lot of talk around it at the moment, is that is a non-absorbable ingredient. So what does that mean? It means the dispersion size of that particle is actually really important, because I could have, say, 5 grams of berberine or 5 grams of berberine, but if I have got one berberine that is a block and I've got one that has been smashed into a billion pieces, and we're going for dispersion across the whole biome, well, what's going to have a larger impact? The one block that rumbled through, or the actual more finely tuned XYZ, what will have an impact? So we look at that, and that's part of our process there. And we did find that when using, obviously, as you would think, the more refined version of certain ingredients, you get different results.
How did you test that?
In just little study groups. So we actually were even coming.
But how did you test whether it was in granules or one blob?
They're our ingredients, so we obviously, you get a certain ingredient and then it goes through like a milling process, whether you're using a jet mill or whether you're using whatever you might be using to process your ingredient, and you're determining like the size of, what you put in, how finely you're milling stuff, how finely you're not milling stuff. All of that is determined in the lab. So yeah.
Interesting.
Like,
How many,
sorry,
you go.
it
You
has
go.
to get certain mesh sizes with like for the ingredient processing. So, you know, you might choose a 80 mesh, you might choose a 50 mesh, you might choose a 10 mesh, just depending on what you're trying to achieve with different things, and then make sure it's going through that before it then gets processed. And then you've also got to consider what it's being carried in as well. Like, how are you, like, is it a powder? Is it in water? Is it in oil? And those sort of elements.
Interesting. How many subjects were in that research that you did?
I think our very first one, so we went through 21 different iterations of our product, both in making it stable, but also in figuring out the side effects, not the side effects, but a couple of, I'll tell you that story after. But our first one, I think we only had like 20, and then we went on to do a bigger one of 50, and then we repeated with that sample size, the same people across a period of time. So obviously it's very hard to report these sort of things. So we did it in part with their bowel movement. So we used something called the eye stool. There's a standardized testing thing to check against stool consistency, to check against their daily symptoms, to check against, we also looked at periods as well, very interestingly, because there is some evidence there now rolling out that our gut microbiome might be affecting our periods. So that's ongoing, something that we're looking at the company right now.
Interesting. I'd love to see that. I couldn't find it on I saw all the ingredients and the individual ingredient research and stuff, but I'd love to see that research. I think that's pretty interesting. Do you have plans to do more research or any other peer-reviewed clinical trials, anything, which I understand is not cheap?
We're not going to go down the pharmaceutical route. So we will, just because we're not trying to develop a drug, but what we are looking at doing is looking at people's microbiomes and what is most commonly missing in them, taking a approach where we could get people's guts, or either by a sample or by what symptoms they're reporting and what most commonly correlates to which bacteria strain. So by looking at that and then being able to put together, I guess, almost like a custom probiotic. So this is something that we currently have in the works, and we'll see how that goes, but it's been a long process.
That's awesome. What about third-party validation or third-party testing? Do you guys have anybody outside of your company that does this testing or helps you with this testing or helps validate any of your guys' findings?
Sorry, we have to here in Australia, everything. So if you do a supplement, it has to go through and sit in a lab before it gets the TGA stamp of approval to make sure that it is consumer. So you don't have to do that in the US, but and it's why our process is expensive, to make sure that that product is as it says it is. It has the ingredients it says it is, and then we have to go and with our ingredients, like in the US, you don't need to do any of this stuff. That's why we couldn't just bring the product here. But there's a standardized process. And that's why our supplements is a whole lot higher quality than yours, just because in order to get on the TGA, you have to go and make sure the ingredients are as they say they are. And sit it in a lab and see what would happen if if the environment became unstable, to make sure that they're safe for consumers.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. I love that. We need FDA, listen up.
You don't love it. You have to pay the bill, because to go through this process, every single, over in the US when I was developing my product, I didn't have to pay to anyone I don't have to pay to the FDA to bring my product to market. And that's why you've got so much crap there, is you don't have to do this. So a drop shipper can't, unless you're white labeling, which a lot of people white label, a lot of the industry is white labeled. But if you're developing your own product, well, okay, you've got to go do it in a particular lab, in a particular environment, or you've got to set that lab up yourself. So you've got two options there. Or alternate, and then after that, you have to move it through the correct process, go through screening. Our ingredients get sent back. I remember when we were first launching in Australia, and we set our launch date, and one of the ingredients came into factory, and it wasn't to Australian standard. So we just had to, and because we imported our own ingredients, we then just had to, that was completely redundant. It was just a loss. But over in the US, you could get away with just chucking that in your product.
So this is validating what's in the product. Are there people that help with, or do you have a third party that helps with peer-reviewed research? where you're looking at like, we use FixBiome with this, we had a control group, we controlled for placebo, like all of those types of things. Is there a third party for that in Australia?
No, we haven't done that.
Got it. Is that something you guys are planning to do or want to do?
It's not really something that's set up here in terms of that sort of thing. It's more something you do for pharmaceutical type products here in Australia. They're very like it's a different process. And if we were to go down the pharma route and wanted to turn it into like quite literally like a drug, then we would look to do something like that. But you can't you can into some regard. You can set up a control group as we did, and then set up a group that takes the product, and then we also had a third group that took variations of both our other previous variations and the one that we ended up settling on. And we actually didn't put our patent on the first one because we found the second one was more effective for us and for those groups. But in terms of I'm not really sure what you're asking in like what sort of regulatory body or set up there.
Not necessarily the regulatory body, but a lot of companies that we talk to have groups of scientists or scientists that they have on their team that do research, or outside colleges or outside research institutions that would do research to help them have like hardcore peer-reviewed science behind the claims that they make in their marketing.
We can't, that's not legal to make those claims in Australia on our marketing. So we don't have any sort of, if I took it to an institution and did that, it wouldn't let me market that. So we've set up our own studies with that. But that's not, I do know, I'm familiar with what you're talking about now. And I know that you can pay people in the US to go and do it that way. But I think we just operate a bit differently.
Interesting. That's wild. And what about advertising and marketing and claims and things like that you make on the US side?
Yeah, so in the US, you can, like, it's a very different kettle of fish. So you can have anyone who's essentially been a case study for the product going and testing them. It's a very standard process. Whereas here in Australia, you can't. You will also probably see some of our doctor, like a focus on different ads that have more doctors in them, or like that use the product with their patients. So in Australia, we actually can't use the word patient when talking about supplements, but over there we can use that because we know that a lot of our doctors actually found us. So the ones that I've spoken to, I think every doctor I've spoken to has been somebody who was looking for either ingredients, which was where they originally started, or they were particularly interested in the way in which those ingredients were encapsulated, and that's what drew them to trying the product with their patients, particularly those more functional medicine doctors. We tend to have a very good relationship with people who do integrative health, so they're medical doctors, but they also see the validity, which some doctors don't, in using alternates to drugs, provided they are at a particular standard, which would still be considered helpful for the patient.
Interesting. That's cool. Yeah. We love understanding these types of things and the claims people make. So appreciate you sharing. You had mentioned a second ago, are there any side effects or downsides or anything like that in relation to FixBiome? Generally, nothing's perfect. So it's not a shot at you at all.
If you've got an active product and active ingredients going on that's making a change, like people are if you take something and you get no effect, like we have something called, we call it Detox or die-off, or we did call it die-off, but that was a bit aggressive. So now we call it Detox. But we did have a period of where we saw when we were doing our sampling that some people actually, when clearing things out or shifting things in their gut microbiome, get worse. And that has to do with the level of intestinal permeability. In medicine, when we see this reaction, it's called can't even say it, but the Gera, like, something reaction. So yeah, some people do. We observed it in about 7 to 8% of people did end up for the first period of time feeling a lot worse before they started to feel better, and that's just as a result of clearing things out, things changing, your motility. If you've got liquid movements or you've got solid movements, it tends to be like they might get diarrhea for a period of time and things like that. So we did see that in 8% of people, and we repeated that like many times over hundreds of people to see what that really looked like and how bad it was. And with some earlier iterations of our product, actually, there were as a result of using potencies and quite strong active we had all of our capsules burst. So in the US, we were using very active, because we were doing the distill out process of an active. We saw our capsules rupture, which nearly destroyed an entire product run. About 15% of them, the capsule wasn't strong enough to hold the product, and therefore it was on our oil-based one. And I thought that was going to wipe the company pretty early on, because I didn't want to bring the other 2 products to market without the third, because we knew at that stage it worked better as a whole system. And yeah, it was horrible. It was so horrible. And then we found, when we put it to the testing group, that the capsules actually burnt. So not like, this is like before we obviously, but they were so like, because the oil was so potent with the ingredient distilled in it. What was happening was, in the very weak capsules, because we had to go and look at the capsules and cut them open, the walls were just too thin. So the actual potency of the product was able to break down the capsule there, and then if there was even slight variability in that capsule surface, which there is, then they would pop, and they would ooze out. So we then had to go and look at that all over again, and that wasn't a fun time, but you live and you learn, and it's been all part of the process.
Damn, sounds like the entrepreneurial journey 101. I imagine that was stressful.
Yes, it was definitely, but at the end of the day, I'd had my problem. Like, I was in law school, I had really bad psoriasis. I was shitting myself literally every day. Like, all of my bowel movements were absolutely liquid. I'd spent probably 20 grand on trying to fix my own problem. That's how bad it had got. I've been to so many specialists. It was not, if I wanted to make money, I honestly could have just stayed in law school, like, at the end of the day. But I really wanted to bring something to market that was what I needed in that time, and building that community really fueled me in, like, knowing how many other people, particularly women. I think the whole motivation was probably a chip on my shoulder, I'm not gonna lie. But hearing how many women would go into the doctor and be told that, you know, you've got IBS and their hair's falling out and they're having weight issues and they're shitting themselves all the time, or they can't shit. And it's just like, oh, just part of being a woman, or stress. You've got IBS, move along. And that came into exactly why we developed the system as we did. First, we had to develop a hypothesis of what IBS most commonly was. And then from there, we had to figure out ways in which we wanted to try and tackle that naturally without having to introduce pharmaceuticals for the people that did want to take that route. And yeah, that's kind of how we went without it.
Hell yeah. Cool. Appreciate it. All right. I think that's, unless you got anything else for the lab section, Chloe?
No. One thing I will say with supplements is supplements are so hard to navigate in general. I mean, when looking at supplements for the gut, just remember that it's not exactly the same as supplements for absorption. So we really want your vitamin C to end up in your bloodstream. That's the whole point. But what we don't want sometimes is actually your gut supplement to end up absorbed or unstable, or, you know, we want it sometimes to stay there for as long as it can to take impact. And when you are looking at particular products and things like that, know that there's a lot of white labeling. So a lot of consumers don't know the concept of white labeling. So it's when you buy a product that's already on the shelf and you stick your brand on it instead of going through the costly and horrible development process. I would probably estimate 80% of the stuff, if not more, on the market is white labeled. And that's only because of the influx of drop shippers and stuff like that into, you know, TikTok make money quick type stuff. But that's something to be very mindful of. And I would look, when you're evaluating a supplement, is, well, who would give this to someone? So I think a lot for us, like, one of my proudest moments is with FixBiome was when one of the people that had been struggling for such a long time had such a life-changing impact. They went on to write like a book about their journey and like spoke about like how they were very anti supplement too, as I was, coming from a medical family. And they wrote about it as part of their journey. And like the first time I started getting doctors contacting us saying, oh, this has really helped my patient, or this has really helped blah, blah, blah. We originally didn't even have a practitioner program. It was by people coming to us. And I think that was really rewarding. So talk to your naturopath FixBiome will not be the right solution for everyone. Some people are going to have issues we just don't tackle. And it's really important to know, like, when you do use our product, I'd say first and foremost, make sure you've gone to your doctor, you've had a stool test for one, and it's not something that we're just not going to address. Make sure that all those standard tests have been run. I mean, scopes, yeah, sometimes they're still going to show negative things, but often they just show minimal abnormality. But make sure you've also gone and been tested for cancer, like genuinely colon cancer, because it's now rising in the young for the first time ever. I'm more likely than my dad to die of it. So really rule that crap out. And if a doctor tells you that something's not wrong, like, you know if something's wrong in your body. So do try to keep advocating for your health. And I know it sucks to have to try so many different things. It's very deflating. But being like, I mean, try FixBiome is great, but those are the steps to go through first. Make sure you don't have any medical issues. Make sure that if a doctor dismisses you, you don't just accept it and go on to a diet of complete exclusion where you can eat 2 foods and you become significantly malnourished and start to create other problems in your body. It's really, really common. Eating disorders can both cause gut issues, but also cause like trigger warnings for people, but also cause disordered eating, which then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's only natural. If humans are reacting to food, they're going to avoid it, and avoidance of large food groups is not healthy for people in general. So yeah, advocate for yourself. Try. It's a new market, but yeah, going on, cut that out.
Hell yeah. No, I love that. I think that's amazing. The next section we've got is something that we lovingly call, I mentioned before, the interrogation. So we get to put on our skeptical consumer hats a little bit here in this portion. We take questions from the audience. We have some of our own. And the first one that I have is you guys talk about a like special manufacturing process that's superior to traditional supplement manufacturing. But what makes it superior, and what evidence do you have to make that claim?
So when we talk about that, we're talking about how specifically we encapsulate and what we put our actives in, so our choices around that, and also how we refine each natural ingredient. So what's our process for exact quantities and exact, I guess, particle size on that to, have max impact on the gut, based on what we understand about the gut today in 2025. So yeah,
got it.
That's what we're talking about.
How do you know it's superior versus other things necessarily? Like what's behind that?
Basic logic on how the human body works is one, but also through our test groups and things like that, we know that if you're designing something that is in a particular oil or a particular powder, how far can it even stand up against gastric juices? Like, this is a whack story. Once I had to actually test a capsule and we needed stomach acid. So and to see how long it would take it to break down. And this was at very early days, and I actually vomited to see how long it would take to break down the capsule. Apparently the doctor's like, that's not going to work because you've skewed it, because you've had too much water, and that's not now normal environment. I'm like, won't it work? And they're just like, no, like we can't do it like that. But by looking at your gastric juices and how quickly things break down, so everyone's going to differ, like we are humans, in their gastric juices, but understanding stuff like, okay, if the capsule is this thick, is it going to break down this quickly, is it going to, all that sort of technical stuff needs to be considered when dealing with the gut, because it goes through like those things. Even your saliva is that like your breakdown process starts right in your mouth, and then continues on. So if you're aiming for certain parts of the gut, or you're aiming to get somewhere, you need to consider those kinds of things. Like, this capsule is this way because we want it to make it past the stomach. This capsule is not this way because we want it to open there, like, and things like that. So that's all about your manufacturing process. So that's what makes sense. I'm trying to explain this in lay terms, but yeah, that's sort of how we go about it. And then back to the ingredients, and are they designed to be taken into the blood, or are they designed to be moving through the gut in a particular way?
Yeah, it's interesting. The basics make sense. My biggest question was like how, like we talked with a company on here. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bionic, but they have granules, and they do, instead of like a pill or a capsule at all, there are these granules that you mix into food or water or whatever, and they're these little micro granules that are supposed to disperse through and release over 24 hours or so, like a longer period of time, as opposed to like all at once. And as an example, and they did testing where they looked at the granules and looked at how much of whatever mineral or whatever micronutrient was in the granules, how much of that was in the blood over X period of time versus a traditional capsule. And they had research to kind of show, here are our granules, here was the blood markers and the biomarkers and blood markers over X period of time versus the traditional release method with a gel cap, with a lichen cap, or I forgot what the other cap was. But as an example, that's something, a part of research that they did in relation to their granule methodology. And so I was just curious if you guys had done something like that or similar to that before as well.
In order to look at exactly where things are going in the gut, you need to be able to cut somebody, like to look at like the center of the small intestine or the large intestine. So we actually just can't do testing like that. It's easy to do something when it's in blood markers, but the gut, in terms of the tests available, is actually a very different place. If we could, we would, but it's just simply there are very limited ways to test people. You can scope them, but that's not going to show, like they wouldn't be here or have this problem if their scopes was showing up with anything abnormal there. You can test their stool. That's being done at the doctor. So there is something going on in that middle piece based on, multiple factors. So it's just not the same. Like, this is reported off symptoms, how the person feels, what their bowel movements look like and stuff like that. So it's just there. If we could, we would, but no, we haven't done anything like that.
Got it. So it's just hard in general for the gut biome and the biome and stuff. That's interesting.
Problem exists, right? This problem exists because our testing, people think that medicine's all like made up and like 100% to this day. Well, actually, no. When my grandfather was in medical school, he was taught certain parts of the gut was sterile. The gut's a really challenging place. If you get shot in the gut, you're going to die. Because there is so much crap going on there. So the only time we will actually sample certain parts of the gut is in life or death situations, because it's incredibly risky to do that. And you're not going to do that because you have constipation. Another way that you can look at it is by having people swallow magnetic stuff, but that still doesn't show you. It only shows you the movement. That's all that there is available in medicine right now. And it's getting better, but it is still very much a new and emerging field.
Got it. So based on all of the research that is available and the testing that's available, essentially, like you're saying, this is what we believe is the best based on all the testing that is even literally physically possible. So that makes a lot more sense. I got that.
Breath testing, we have looked at that. So seeing if it has an impact, but that's still only testing one component, right? You can't see in the middle of the gut what's going on.
Got it. What are some of the biggest skepticisms or criticisms or anything that you guys get or that you commonly hear when people are talking about your product?
Why does it cost more when I could get these ingredients individually? And I'm just because it's not the same ingredient. So that's the most common thing. We do have a higher price point because quite literally we're using different ingredients. We're going through a different process. We're throwing out shit that's not to our standard, just because we know that we're not looking for X ingredient, we're looking for Y, or the actual X part of that ingredient. So that means that maybe on that particular batch, that's just not going to be fit. And at the end of the day, as this space develops, I'm not going to bring something that, although on the label would show the same thing to the customer, wouldn't, if someone who's been taking a product and you give them the exact same thing, technically we know it's not the exact same thing, it's not going to be as good. You'll lose that trust and that loyalty, and this is a growing space that we want to continue to expand on as the research expands. That's why, and I will never come down, I'll never cut the costs on anything to up our profit margins. So that's our most common criticism.
Got it. Damn, that's interesting. I love that. I'm glad that you brought that point up. That's a really, really good point to bring up. All right. You made it through the interrogation. Congratulations. Let's talk about the future. What's on the horizon for y'all? I don't know how much you can share, but do you have a product roadmap? Do you know what you're going to be doing in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. So The microbiome and custom microbiome type stuff is definitely an area we're very interested in. Like I said, the gut's not the same in every person. It's very unique. So we're currently looking at ways of, okay, well, based on what we do know about the gut, what are the most common themes we're seeing going on for people that are experiencing these different issues? What do their biomes look like? And therefore, what particular strands of bacteria or XYZ may be most beneficial to people in that circumstance, which would be different for me, different for you, different for Chloe, and so forth. So that's a focus for us, is the individualized microbiome. That's why FixBiome in itself aims to influence the gut as a whole, unique to your biome, instead of just saying, okay, we should take the same exact capsule of stuff, even though somebody in Japan and somebody in Australia have completely different guts. And I can tell you that by looking at their gut microbiome. You guys will have, being from America, there'll be similarities between your biomes, and people from Australia similarities again. And that's because our gut's influenced by everything.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. So you're the founder of a wellness company. What's the biggest concern about the health and wellness space that we should watch out for, in your opinion?
Food, 100% food. Food, it is quite. There is so much stuff in our guts now, that shouldn't have been able to grow in such a way, or shouldn't have been able to function or become off kilter, because we are feeding it things the body's just not used to seeing. A lot of stuff that is seen as safe, or this is sort of how I like to explain it to people. Nature designs things in particular ways, right? Like you could easily sit down and eat enough sugar or drink enough sugar for 15 oranges in like a couple of cups of orange juice. In nature, good luck sitting down and eating 15 oranges in one sitting. What do you think that's doing to your body? It's completely unnatural. There is a reason that fiber, that, other things were coupled in with that ingredient. The reason we see a rise in stuff like metabolic damage, and even just people getting fatter despite us having more calorie food, like, that's a really interesting thing. People like, I'll go on a low-fat diet. It's like, yeah, sure, you could do that, but actually fat serves a purpose. Like, it makes you feel satiated and it increases your leptin levels, right? And that is the satiation hormone. And you can artificially stop that for a bit and you can go on your diet, but it's very likely you'll yo-yo back the other way. So the biggest damage, like the biggest threat to all of our health physically, is quite literally the food industry. Like, there are labs, like food, like I don't think people understand this concept. They put people in sensory deprivation labs and figure out the exact amount of sugar and salt and fiber to remove to make you consume the most. Like, they want to move the most product. They're not sitting there being like, what will make Sally feel the best in the morning and give the lowest risk of metabolic damage. They're like, no, what will sell the most of my goddamn product? And then they give you that. So nature doesn't give you that. So I'd consider that when you think about diet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have this argument a lot, that people around dieting and different things, especially around fats, because they don't affect your blood glucose as much either. And so people don't think about that.
No, and it's just like, oh, fat's high calories, right? But it's like, yeah, but fat's also stable blood sugar levels.
Exactly.
High levels of, all these metabolic conditions, type 2 diabetes. Why does that exist? Because you eat foods every single day that give you metabolic damage, that train your body into, like, fats are good, sugar is good, carbs are good, they're all good, there is no bad. But playing with these mechanisms is what is causing these diseases.
Preach. She's on one. I love it. That's beautiful. So tell us about a big player or strategic partner in your industry that you would love to work with, and why.
I think for us, like, we give back to the research. So like I said, the research in gut health is very recent, and I really want to see that change. So we actually partnered with the Gut Foundation on their largest fundraising event. We funded that purely with no commercial gain, to try and see this space be brought forward. So I would really like to see, this is not even possible because it's so early on, but if it was my dream way, I would love to be able to partner with somebody and look at endometriosis in more detail and the gut microbiome.
Wow.
I think that's going to be such an interesting space. I would almost be willing to put money in the fact that they are very, very closely linked. The research is so early, but even just in mass observation of with customers, like that was a constant, like, reported change for them. I would love to see that. But dream partner, I'd love to work with somebody like, I look up to Andrew Huberman. Who doesn't? I love his stuff. I mean, he's
what a guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of something, but yeah.
He a huge moment for me. The other day I posted, he interviewed the founder of internal family system psychotherapy, and that's the type of therapy I'm trained in, Dr. Dick Schwartz. And I posted that on my story, and Dr. Huberman liked it. I was like, no freaking way. Like, I texted my girlfriend, I texted Chloe, I texted the whole team. I was like, guys. So I'm a fan of Hubes too. Wild time.
Awesome.
Yeah, just fangirling over here. No, I'm kidding. Okay, sounds like you got some exciting times ahead though. So the last section is something that our audience lives for. It's called the Lightning Lab. I talked to you a little bit about it beforehand. The goal here, these are kind of quick hitters, but the goal is to answer each of these questions in one word, one sentence, or one story. Your choice, not like you're on trial here. So if you go a little bit over, that's totally cool. But the first question I would love to ask is a dark industry secret. So what's a shady practice in the health and wellness space that nobody's talking about?
The fact that you can literally put, if it's a natural ingredient, the same word on a label. I don't think you should be able to. So I can put a rotten apple in your supplement and it'll say apple, or I can put a fresh healthy apple in your supplement and it'll still say apple, and you have no way of determining that.
That's just terrifying. That is terrifying.
And another thing is there are so many, because of the boom in TikTok, and like drop shipping and all of that, there's so much white labeling going on. So many of your supplements are all coming out of the same factory, like the same, and all that is important to them is they make a buck. Like, that's the point. That's why you're being sold to.
Christ almighty. That's wild time. All right, that was a good one. I like that one. Okay, next one is a Peter Thiel classic. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's an American entrepreneur.
Yeah,
but...
no, I do.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah. I hope so. I figured you would. What's an important truth in the wellness space that very few people agree with you on?
That we're getting sicker. These problems purely exist because of our modern environment. We don't live in a healthier time like than at previous times in history, but living in misalignment to how humans should is making us very depressed, very fat, and very unhappy.
Okay. I would definitely say that's a counterintuitive truth. Okay, last one is, what's a question that you wish more people asked you?
That's a good one. Why does gut health, I think probably when it comes to the company, why does gut health matter, and more about the effects of the gut on mental health, and also how mental health affects the gut, because it's really big, and you can make a fat rat skinny by changing its gut microbiome and giving it the same amount of calories, which is pretty crazy, by just switching it over, which defies science. In a lot of, we think a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. Well, actually, to everyone, no, it's not. A calorie is how much or how little your gut energy, you as the unique host, can extract. You are not a calorie is actually just an expression of energy when in an isolated environment. You're not that. So actually, 100 calories to me versus 100 calories to Chloe, and it scares some people, can be different depending on our gut. And when it comes to mental health, you can make a sad rat happy by changing its gut microbiome, and a happy rat sad. So sad it won't eat. According to rat studies. So yeah, it's pretty interesting and has a big influence on both weight and mental health.
Dang, that's amazing.
People just don't, when it comes to the gut, people just think it's not like a blood marker. Like, it's not like that. It's a very complex machine of lots of different things. It's not that simple. So literally, if you have certain bacteria, you're going to be more effective or less effective at extracting certain types of energy. And that might be fats or proteins or certain structural, like, there is so much variability there. But your best bet is things of nature. That's what your body will know how to deal with best.
Something I'm curious about, this is kind of off the cuff here a little bit, but we've mentioned how confusing and complex and insane the gut is. How do you, as someone who runs a company, balance like research and what we don't know with what you like advertise and market, like in the messaging, so that you can sell your product? Because you want to sell your product, and that's totally normal. That's totally cool. I'm here for that. But how do you balance it? How do you think about that? It's such a hard spot to be in.
No, quite literally, my morals have always been like, and I say this all the time, supplements aren't the right solution for everyone. Like, I don't want to take your money if it's not going to help you. Like, that's not, that's personal. I don't, like, I shouldn't say this, we have no refunds policy because obviously we're a supplement, we won't work for everyone. We refund people all the time just because of their journey, just because of what they've been on. Like, I've been there. Don't everyone go buy it and then claim a refund to get a free product. My customer service will notice, but it remains really important. Just look at who you're buying from. At the end of the day, you're buying from groups of people, and I think working with people that genuinely went into medicine because they want to see humans healthy, happy, and thriving really runs throughout the whole company, right? You know, FixBiome shouldn't and won't be the right fit for everyone. There'll be other products that are better and you should buy, but look at our customers, look at who has had success with our product, where they were. If it sounds like you, then maybe it's a good fit. If it doesn't, then it's probably not, and you should probably keep looking. So that'd be my take, and how we balance marketing, but also the lack of awareness in the space is by morale. Like, we make money, we make profit, and we also give that back to the space and want to see more research because that only benefits the industry as a whole. And when you really think about it in capitalist terms, quite dumb. It's like, if we find a solution, that I don't have a company, but at the same time, we're nowhere close. Finding out more, it's just kind of how we operate.
Hell yeah. I love that. Cool. So the last question that we always ask everybody, each of our guests gets to leave a question for the next guest. So the last question is from a previous guest. His name's Chris. Everybody calls him Bernie. He's from MindRight. He's also in the supplement and nootropic space. Not necessarily you're in nootropic. Well, I guess you could argue. I digress. Sorry. But he's in the supplement space nonetheless. And the question he left for you is, what impact do you think you could make to improve someone's longevity?
That's huge at the moment. I mean, gut health has now been linked to things like Alzheimer's in the literature and things like Parkinson's disease. Having good gut health will quite literally spare you of degenerative diseases. The Gut Foundation likes to say here in Australia, and their leading gastro who founded it, who's a guy called Terry Boland, is all disease begins in the gut, and you can see it even years in advance. So by looking after your gut health, you will live longer. Like, that's just the bottom line. You got gut issues, you're going to die sooner. The longer you have them, probably the more years you're taking off your life. And people can come to me and be like, well, what studies? I'm like, I'll show you when the people died. But I think take care of your gut health because it really is inflammatory based conditions, and they are the ones that will kill you early because they're constant.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. All right, what's the question you'd like to leave for our next guest? Don't know who it's going to be, but they'll be in the health and wellness space. What's a question you want to leave them?
What do you think is the number one thing humans intuitively know that is good for us and we should be doing, but modern day life has stopped us from doing, caused by a disconnect between like one's body and the world we're living in, whether that be, it wasn't too succinct, but could probably let me just fill that down. What is one thing in the modern world that you think is normalized that is the most damaging to our health? But everyone does it. Most people.
How would you answer that question? What would your answer be?
I would say diet.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be my answer. That one's probably a bit difficult. This is harder than you think. Oh, not easy. What's one thing you think we should stop doing to improve our overall mood? That's a good one.
Our mood?
Like our mental health. Yeah. What is one thing you think people should do less of to improve their mental health?
Got it. Beautiful. I like that. Cool.
Me too.
All right. Well, we really appreciate it. It's been a long one, but we really appreciate you hopping on and diving in all the research and all of the different sections and things that we have people drop into, is there anything you'd like to leave people with, or any place you'd like to send people?
No, I think just look after your gut health. Trust your gut too. When you know something's wrong, and that goes for your health as a whole. Like, you know your body better, and I think we're living in a generation of over-reliance on experts to an extent. They're a massively great resource, but you know what's right for your body. Like, the keto diet might be right for somebody, like an epileptic child, according to studies, but you know, another diet might be right for someone else. It really just depends on you, and you need to determine that, because no expert's going to be able to make that call for how you feel. And that's what health is: feeling well and living long.
I love that. Cool. And is there any place you'd like to send people or point them to as we wrap up?
If you've got gut issues, definitely would advise you to go and look at FixBiome if they've been going on for a while. If you want a product that is designed to help your gut stand up against the modern world and all the things that you honestly will struggle not to encounter in this day and age, Gut Fix is a great everyday. But yeah, go have a look. If it's not the right fit for you, keep looking.
Beautiful. I love that. Cool. Well, thank you so much. We'll make sure to link that in the comments. That's it for our conversation. As our viewers know, though, it's time for our lab results section. So stick around after we say goodbye to Jasmine to talk with Chloe and I directly. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. So it's time for the lab results section where we kind of break down what we really think. Most importantly, we get to rate how, if we think the person that we talked with today, Jasmine from FixBiome, passed the lab results section, and give our rating. So the ratings are passed the lab test, needs more testing, or failed the lab test. Where you at, Chloe?
I say pass. What do you say, Cody?
I middle of pass and needs more testing. I think that one of the points, and I don't know if she's getting frustrated or if it's just stuff she couldn't say, because she had mentioned like Australia has different perspectives, is the research behind the claims they make, and not having peer-reviewed like research around the specific mechanism of action, their specific formulation, and like having larger sample sizes, peer-reviewed research, like things like that, I think would be really, really helpful and useful. I do think that they are doing the best they possibly can. As she mentioned, it's really hard to test the gut biome and things like that. So I don't think it's out of malicious intent by any means, but I really would love to see some more independent research done around the claims they're making, not because they're going to go into the pharmaceutical space or try to make like a pharmaceutical, but just so that when they say we can help with leaky gut, we can help with SIBO, whatever, there's like some research and stuff behind it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. My perspective, looking at the supplements before hopping on, they do have clinically backed valid ingredients. So everything in there has clinical research. I really do like that they've gone into different delivery mechanisms. Something that I see all the time in the supplement space is manufacturers and formulators will sometimes put just a bunch of stuff in one pill. Some of it will be fat soluble, some of it will be water soluble. And so do you take this with food, without food? Do the ingredients actually like get absorbed together, or do they like negatively affect each other? And so I think it's really good that they went and did that. Having that like multiple course system, I think is really, really effective. I think more supplement companies need to start doing that. So that was really good. I did find that she had a lot of knowledge on the gut microbiome and presented herself as an expert in the space. So that was really, really good. And then
I would love to see, I agree with the first point you made. I would just love to see research around it. Like, I love that they've got a different mechanism of action. I love that they're doing different things. And I love that all of the individual ingredients are research backed, but all of them in combination in their one product. I'd love to see research about that, not just the independent products.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is like one of my hopes for the supplement space in general, is that doing this kind of research becomes a lot more affordable and accessible.
Yes. Oh,
because that's something that I think I want to make really clear to people that are listening, because a lot of people, especially in the scientific space, are always like, where's the clinical studies? Where's the research? And, you know, Cody and I do tend towards that too, but you also have to balance that with, in order to do this as a startup, this research, you know, doing this as a supplement company, like a small sample size could be $150K. If you want really true, like a strong, like really strong clinical trial, like you're looking at multi-millions of dollars and years of time.
Yeah, that's such a great freaking point. That is such a good point. I agree. Like, and I feel like I sometimes come off as the hard ass in these conversations around this, but I do have that same perspective. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. That's such a great point. Okay, so bottom line, would you buy this?
Yes, I would definitely buy it.
Hell yeah, me too. I ultimately would as well. I think they're doing the best they possibly can. It sounds like there's a lot more regulations and thing in Australia, so that kind of feels good as well. All right, is there something that caught you off guard or something that's new that you learned or a surprise or a moment that you had while we were talking with Jasmine?
There was something and I completely what was it?
Dude, I know mine is the concept that, well, first of all, the sad rat, happy rat thing by just changing the biome, that was wild. But the second one was what she talked about, like you could put a rotten apple in a piece of, in a food and put apple in the ingredients, or you could put a completely unripe, or you could put a normal apple, and all of those are apple. And I was just like, that kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, I think that one was really interesting. I think that was mine that I was going to pick. I can't remember. I thought there was something else too.
Yeah, she had a wealth of knowledge. I mean, she had some really cool stuff. So cool. All right, well, that's a wrap for the Decision Lab. We hope our lab results section gave you some clarity that you needed to decide on today's brand. If it's worth your time, if it's worth your money, or if it's total BS. If you love this no BS approach to wellness, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if there's a brand you want us to investigate next, drop it in the comments. Hit us up on Instagram. We love to hear from y'all. See you guys next time on the Decision Lab.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Peace.